Hi, I'm Vena. My dad told me not to come to his retirement party. No explanation, no seat, not even my name on the napkins. But worse than being left out was watching them hand my work, my words, and my silence to someone else, and clap for it. They erased me from the photos, from the speeches, even from the RSVP list. So why did his boss raise a glass and call me boss instead? You ever wonder what it feels like to build the stage and still get locked outside the room? The moment I saw Buster Reserved Family Pet on the seating chart, I knew I wasn't just unwanted. I was invisible. It had been a quiet Tuesday, the kind where spring hadn't yet made up its mind about being warm or chilly. I was sipping from a lukewarm mug of peppermint tea, scanning through emails before a client pitch when my phone buzzed. A forwarded message from a former neighbor, Mrs. Greer, who thought she was including me in something I'd already known. So excited for the big event. Can't wait to see everyone at Luther's party. Attached was the seating chart for the retirement dinner. Long tables, assigned seats, printed name cards. Claire next to Dad. My brother Ethan 2 seats down. Even the dog had a gold foil placard. Me? Nowhere. No oversight. No forgotten line. Just absence. I stared at it for a moment too long, then stood up and walked to my printer. I pulled open my desk drawer, took out the heavy cardstock I used for investor briefs, and printed my own invitation. I worded it carefully. To Vena Warren, you are formally uninvited from the celebration of Luther Warren's legacy. Attendance not required. Participation discouraged. Below it, I signed his name in cursive, slipped it into an envelope, addressed it to my parents' home, dropped it in the mail that afternoon. I didn't need a reply. I already had the answer. That night, after finishing my investor review, I called my father. No small talk. I offered help, logistics, design, catering. I've managed events with multi-million-dollar stakeholders. One dinner party in Raleigh wouldn't kill me. His voice was even, polite, almost clinical. Let's keep it simple this time, he said. You won't be speaking at the party. Not, can you help? Not, you're busy, so maybe next time. Just, you won't be heard. I didn't argue. I thanked him for his time and hung up. Later, I tried to remember the last time I was allowed to speak in a family setting without someone correcting, editing, or cutting me off. A holiday toast when I was 27. I made a joke about healthcare stocks, and Claire told me to speak English. After that, I stopped volunteering stories. It wasn't worth it. Growing up, dinners always had the same configuration. My father at the head, Ethan next to him, Claire opposite, and me, at the corner, closest to the kitchen. That seat wasn't random. That seat was chosen. I wasn't neglected. I was strategically positioned. They didn't know what to do with a daughter who didn't wear heels to Easter or cry over failed romances. I didn't hand over grandkids or wedding registries. I handed over spreadsheets and 6-figure returns. That wasn't something they could brag about in Sunday brunches or church pews. I think they loved me. I really do, but only in private. The kind of love that doesn't require acknowledgement. A week ago, my father posted a picture on LinkedIn. Celebrating 30 years of leadership. Wouldn't be here without my incredible kids. Claire was tagged. Ethan was mentioned in the caption. No mention of me. I reread the post 4 times. Not out of surprise, out of habit. I was trained to scan for my name and adjust expectations accordingly. Later that same night, my phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from the caterer's assistant, accidentally CCing me. Subject line. Final place card list for Mr. Warren's event. I scrolled through the names, read them twice. There was no Vena, no Warren, youngest daughter, nothing. I reached the bottom. Buster, reserved, family pet. They had a seat for the family dog, but not for me. The worst part wasn't being forgotten. It was realizing that no one even noticed. That seating chart with Buster's name still sat open on my laptop the next morning. I didn't close it. I didn't need to. It had already printed itself into memory. My coffee went cold. untouched. Instead of packing for my upcoming panel in Atlanta, I scrolled through my father's social media again, hoping, against every reasonable instinct, that maybe there had been a misunderstanding. Maybe I'd missed something, but there was nothing to miss. I hadn't been excluded accidentally. I'd been removed. Later that week, while reviewing marketing slides for a partnership launch, I saw a familiar name pop up on LinkedIn, one of my father's retired colleagues. He had posted a congratulatory message, honoring Luther Warren for his leadership and dedication, a true legacy, and a family to be proud of. I should have swiped past it, but I didn't. I clicked. Under the post, my father had replied. He thanked Ethan and Clare for their support. Then someone commented, "Didn't you say you had a third child? What's she up to these days?" His response was swift. "She does data stuff, hard to explain." That phrase stuck. Not because it was vague, but because it was intentional. He didn't say I was a strategic advisor, didn't say I led health impact investment portfolios for a national firm, didn't mention I'd presented to the Department of Veterans Affairs last quarter. Just data stuff. Hard to explain, too complicated, not fit for display. It landed like a stone, heavy, cold, permanent. I didn't respond. I didn't comment. I just sat there, rereading it until the letters blurred. A couple of days later, while I was reviewing a vendor agreement over Zoom, my phone buzzed. A name I hadn't seen in a while. Don McAllister, one of Dad's longtime friends from his early finance days. He left a voicemail. His voice was light, almost nostalgic. "Hey Luther, just confirming. Both kids will be at the party, right? Looking forward to meeting that sharp daughter of yours again." Irene was sitting nearby. I heard her say, "That's Don calling," before she passed the phone over. My father didn't hesitate. "Yes, my two wonderful kids will be there." My stomach didn't drop. My pulse didn't spike, because I'd stopped expecting anything different. Irene said nothing. Didn't correct him, didn't pause. Just continued folding laundry like she hadn't heard a thing. I waited. A part of me wanted to call, to confront, to ask why. But instead, I opened the budget document for the $12 million health equity fund I was overseeing. Typed in a line item adjustment, hit save. It was easier to fix money than to fix what was broken in my family. That evening, I looked through old photo albums on my phone. Claire's graduation party, Ethan's engagement dinner, the retirement brunch we threw for Dad when he first announced his transition. I remembered paying for the catering. I remembered writing the speech Clare delivered. I remembered not being introduced once. I scrolled through a few more messages. There was one from Clare last year, asking for help with her student loan consolidation. One from Mom about the roof leak at their house, which I'd quietly paid a contractor to patch. They remembered me when I was useful, not when they were proud. And the realization settled hard in my chest. When people can't summarize you, they erase you. That weekend, while prepping my Atlanta keynote slides, I received an email thread accidentally forwarded from my father's executive assistant. It contained RSVP confirmations and internal updates. I wasn't even supposed to see it. Near the bottom of the thread was a note to the hotel. "Please reserve 2 rooms for Luther's children, Ethan and Clare, and 1 for Clare's sister, can't recall her name." Not even daughter, just someone adjacent, peripheral, optional. I stared at that line, mouth dry, fingers hovering over the trackpad. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I just sat with it. You start to wonder, when you're left off enough lists, if you're hard to love, or just too inconvenient to introduce. And the worst part? No one even notices they've forgotten you. So when my phone buzzed the next morning with Claire's name flashing on the screen, I already knew she wasn't calling to ask how I was. I let it ring 3 times, then declined it without hesitation. The message that followed was short, no greeting, no warmth. "Mom wants your RSVP final. Planners are getting anxious." No we, just Mom. Like I was being managed like a vendor they forgot to brief. I muted the conversation and went back to my laptop, already halfway through revisions for a policy deck I was presenting that afternoon. A part of me still hoped this would all blow over. Another part, the wiser part, had already started detaching. There's only so many times you can be airbrushed out before you start handing people the brush yourself. Late that afternoon, while double-checking edits in our firm's shared folder, an odd email landed in my inbox. The sender was a junior HR coordinator from my dad's old firm. She'd accidentally CC'd me on a clearance task, archiving post-pandemic employment documentation. I clicked through the attachment, expecting nothing more than dry paperwork. But there it was, a digital thread from 2020. My name in bold. 5 emails, 1 memo, all flagged as external strategic retention advocacy. They detailed my quiet lobbying efforts, emails I'd sent to the board recommending my father remain during the COVID financial cuts. I'd presented his retention not as sentiment, but as logic, experience, network stability, client retention value. They bought it. He kept his job. And he never knew. No one did. I never told a soul. Not even my assistant who helped me prep the data set. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing, protecting legacy, securing peace. Now it just felt like I'd bought my own erasure. An hour later, I was pulling data for a different report when another email landed. This one from Irene. It was meant for Clare. The subject line read, "Speaker order, final draft." The body said, "Clare will speak after Martin. Let's avoid awkward moments. Better Vena doesn't speak." And just like that, it was gone. Deleted from the thread within minutes. But not before I took a screenshot. No follow-up. No, oops, wrong person. Just silence. Just deletion. I saved the screenshot in a folder labeled Things I Don't Say Out Loud. I didn't plan to use it. I just needed to know it happened. I poured myself a glass of water, sat on the floor, and stared at the ceiling. How had I gotten here? How had a lifetime of effort become something so disposable? And why, despite knowing this wasn't new, did it still hit like the first time? I thought about every late payment I covered when Claire lost her job, every roof repair I paid for quietly when Dad refused to ask the HOA for help, the Christmas I bought all the wine and wrapped it under Claire's name so she wouldn't look bad in front of Luther's boss. Maybe I'd never really been the daughter. Maybe I'd always been the fix-it person, the one you keep close when things break, but invisible once the cracks are painted over. Maybe I kept offering help because it was the only way they'd acknowledge I existed. But when usefulness becomes the only reason you're allowed to stay, what's left when you stop volunteering? I stood up, walked back to my desk, opened the party email thread from the planner. I scrolled to the bottom, clicked unsubscribe, then set an auto-response. Vena will be unavailable through June 15th. Please contact Claire with any needs. I opened another tab, canceled the florist order for a centerpiece I'd scheduled to be delivered anonymously, something cheerful for the head table. Peonies and white lilies. A note that would have said, "Congratulations, Dad," from someone who still sees you. I hovered over the cancel button just a second longer than I needed to, then clicked. They wouldn't notice, not unless someone asked why there was one less bouquet, and I wouldn't explain it. As the sun dipped behind the windowsill, casting long shadows across the hardwood, I closed my laptop and let out a quiet breath. I stood, walked into the kitchen, uncorked a bottle of wine, and poured myself a glass. Holding it up, I whispered to no one in particular. I wonder how many of them will notice when the flowers don't arrive. And the more they clapped for the wrong person, the more I realized it wasn't applause I needed. It was recognition. 3 weeks out from the party, everything was starting to go public. Tag after tag, post after post. Pictures of the venue, the menu, even the commemorative wine label Claire had helped design. I was sitting at my desk, headset still around my neck after a conference call, when I clicked on a video Claire posted to the event page. Just a sneak peek of her speech, according to the caption. She was rehearsing in the living room at our parents' house, perfectly framed like an Instagram reel. Her tone was polished, smile soft. And then, as she hit the third paragraph, I heard the words I'd written 2 years ago in a policy white paper for a national panel on health system reform. Verbatim. It wasn't a common phrase. It was a metaphor I'd crafted carefully about frameworks being invisible until they collapse. Claire quoted it like it was her own. No pause, no nod, no citation. I shut the laptop, walked to the kitchen, breathed through my nose like I'd just dodged an accident on the freeway. Later that day, over coffee with Victor Thorne at a quiet cafe tucked off Commonwealth, I showed him the video. He took one sip, glanced at the screen, then back at me. "You ghostwrite legacy now?" he asked, only half joking. I shrugged. "Apparently, and I don't even get royalties." He didn't laugh, just shook his head slowly. That evening, I joined a family Zoom call, the kind of pre-party prep sessions where everyone talks over each other and pretends to be excited. I was on mute, camera on, listening, trying for once not to analyze every phrase. Then it happened. A family friend, Mrs. Conrad, smiled brightly and asked, "So Vena, what are you doing these days? Still in health stuff?" Before I could unmute, Claire jumped in with a laugh. "She does those complex things I can't explain, so don't feel bad if you don't get it." Everyone laughed. I didn't. I looked at my own frozen face on the screen. Then, quietly, I clicked, "Leave meeting." Outside, the late spring air felt heavier than it should have. I walked along the sidewalk, phone in hand, then typed a message to Victor. "Do I still look too complex to introduce?" His reply came within 30 seconds. "If they can't translate your worth, that's their illiteracy. No fluff, no coddling, just truth." I stood in silence, rereading that line while headlights passed, then turned back toward home. Later that night, I pulled up the local interview Luther had given to the Raleigh Business Journal. I'd skimmed it once. This time, I read every word. In the second column, he'd credited his daughter Clare for advising him during a critical moment in a key company transition. I blinked. That critical moment was the midnight call I'd made to Victor, 2 days before the merger nearly derailed due to a clause Luther didn't catch. Claire hadn't even known the deal was in trouble. Still, there it was, in print. This time, I didn't roll my eyes or close the page. I screenshotted the line and texted it to Claire with a heart emoji and the message, "Nice speech. Let me know if you need a footnote." I didn't wait for a reply. Instead, I logged into the family event portal, scrolled through the list of speakers, and clicked decline. Then I turned off my notifications. Not out of anger, but to protect my bandwidth. I wasn't going to keep donating emotional oxygen to a room full of people who kept clapping for the wrong person. At midnight, after the workday ended and the buzz of the party threads dimmed, I sat on the couch with a glass of water. No TV, no music, just the steady hum of the fridge and the quiet company of my thoughts. I looked down at my phone one last time, then turned it over, face down. They could have the spotlight. I'd built the damn stage. And when your name is left off enough lists, you learn to stop writing it down. It was supposed to be just another email from the caterer. Nothing urgent, nothing personal. I was clearing out my inbox between meetings when I opened it by accident. The subject line was vague. Final seating, print confirm. My name wasn't in the recipient list, but somehow it landed in my folder. I clicked. The chart loaded slowly. Dozens of circular tables, golden dots for assigned seats. Claire was front and center next to Dad. Ethan was across, near the podium. A long head table for immediate family. I scanned through, knowing better, but hoping anyway. Seat 23C. Guest. No name, no embroidery, just guest. For a second, I wondered if it was a technical glitch. Until I saw table 1, bottom right corner, Buster, gold dish. The dog had a seat, a dish, a label. I didn't. Claire had designed the napkins, gold thread on cream linen. Irene had signed off. They'd thought this through. That night, I poured a glass of red, sat on the floor with my laptop open, and tried to decide what burned more. Being excluded, or being labeled generic. As the wine dulled the edge, my thoughts wandered back to 2021, the year Dad nearly lost his job over the internal audit. A vendor misbilling scandal, small by corporate standards, but messy enough to draw attention. He was on the shortlist for early retirement. He told everyone it was voluntary. What he didn't know was that I called Victor's legal counsel directly. I'd drafted a memo. I'd defended his track record. I had data and a reputation they trusted. They let him stay, quietly, cleanly. He never asked how the problem vanished. I never offered the truth. That memory felt different now. It used to make me proud. Now it felt like I'd spent years airbrushing his biography. The next morning, I received a notification from Irene's Facebook post. A family photo at the venue walkthrough. Claire and Ethan at the center. Dad smiling wide. Irene holding the seating list. I clicked through. One close-up showed the head table. 8 napkins, each with a name. Even Buster had one, folded neatly with a paw print stitched beside it. Mine was missing. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even text anyone. I opened my email, clicked on my RSVP, changed the status from pending to not attending. Then I wrote a sentence in my journal. If they won't carve my name into linen, they'll never carve it into memory. I sent a short email to Victor. I'll be in Boston that week after all. If the board seat is still open, I'm ready. He replied within minutes. It's yours, and this time front row. That night, I made a small ceremony of it. I deleted every single email thread related to the event, every photo Claire had sent, every spreadsheet, address list, seating update. With each deletion, I felt lighter, like I was finally cleaning a house I'd only ever been allowed to dust. I used to think family was something you had to earn, like tenure. Be quiet, be helpful, be less. Then maybe, eventually, they'd make space for you. But now I saw it clearly. I wasn't left out by accident. I'd been positioned that way, the same way they used to sit me near the kitchen at Thanksgiving. Out of sight, out of mind. Around 7 p.m., I shut my laptop and made a simple dinner. Pasta, half a bottle of wine left, no music. Just the kind of evening where the silence didn't hurt. It clarified. At 9:23 p.m., my phone buzzed. A group text from the family thread I was rarely active in. We'll miss you, Vena. That was it. No. Why aren't you coming? No. We hope you change your mind. Just a sentence so perfectly hollow, it made me laugh. Not all absences are quiet. Some echo louder than applause. Because what they didn't understand was that silence wasn't my surrender. It was the build-up before the drop. It was Monday morning when the alert popped up on my phone. My RSVP had been no, clear and deliberate. Yet there I was, listed on the family event website under logistics consultant. I hadn't signed up for anything. I hadn't agreed to contribute. But somehow, I'd become the help. Again. I double-checked the website, refreshed the page. My name was still there. By noon, I was in my Boston office, neck stiff from hours of Zoom calls, when a package arrived. The return label was from Florence, Italy. I knew what it was before opening it. A year ago, I'd ordered a custom fountain pen for my father, engraved with a Latin phrase he once loved to quote about legacy and time. I'd planned to have it delivered just before the party. I forgot to cancel it after declining. The box was wrapped in tissue and tied with navy ribbon. My name was nowhere on the card. At 4:12 p.m., Claire dropped a message in the group chat. Dad loved the pen, BTW. Beautiful gift, vintage. Wow. How thoughtful of you, Claire. 3 clapping emojis. 1 wine glass. My name wasn't mentioned. I didn't respond. I didn't correct anyone. I opened the order receipt in my email, screenshotted the transaction, then archived it. Not out of spite. Just to remind myself what really happened, in case the gaslighting grew louder later. The next day, while finalizing a client handover doc, another forwarded email landed in my inbox. This one from a junior staffer, meant for legal review. I scanned it without thinking, then paused. It was an internal summary about the merger, one we'd nearly lost in Phase 2. Under strategic lead, it read, Vena Warren, my title, my work, documented. The file had already circulated. Quietly, fully. A few hours later, Victor texted me. Heads up, one of your dad's guys just found out you ran that deal. Expect static. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:31 p.m., an email from Luther appeared. Forwarded from a partner of his. Subject line. Didn't know your daughter ran this thing. My father's reply was short. Neither did I. I stared at those words for a long time. Neither did I. As if that was something I'd kept from him. As if I owed him an update on every fire I'd quietly extinguished on his behalf. I closed my laptop. I didn't cry. Didn't rage. I stood, walked across my apartment, poured a glass of water, and sat with the weight of all the versions of me they'd rewritten without consent. The next morning, I logged into LinkedIn. I found the official announcement about the merger and reposted it with a caption. Sometimes the people who know least speak the loudest. Thankfully, results don't lie. No tags, no hashtags. Just the truth, sitting there like a mirror too bright for some to look into. It gained traction, quietly, among the right people. Later that afternoon, I began compiling a folder on my desktop. Screenshots, receipts, email threads, event flyers. I named the folder Undeniable, not because I wanted to use it, but because I never again wanted to wonder if I imagined the erasure. I didn't need an audience, I just needed a record. By nightfall, I felt clearer than I had in weeks. No explosions, no dramatics, just decisions. When I heard someone say my name incorrectly on a call the next morning, introducing me as Clare's little sister to a visiting investor, I didn't flinch, because for the first time, I knew exactly who I was. And for once, they were the ones getting caught in the echo. And in a room full of speeches, the one thing they couldn't prepare for was the sound of the truth hitting back. I didn't plan to be there. Life did. The Hilton Garden Inn ballroom in Raleigh, of all places, just happened to be hosting both my father's retirement party and my private investor dinner. Same evening, same building, different floors. But fate, as always, has a sense of humor with sharp edges. I arrived through the side entrance, laptop in hand, focused on the meeting ahead. Until I heard my name. A junior executive from the merger team spotted me near the elevator. Vena? He called, voice cautious but friendly. Didn't know you were down here. Victor said you might swing by. Want to step in and say hi? I waved him off politely. Just here for a short meeting, I said, though curiosity tugged harder than I'd like to admit. Passing the main ballroom, I heard Clare's voice coming through the speakers. The doors were cracked open, the room dimmed with golden light, laughter, clinking glasses, and then I froze. She was reading my words. The exact phrasing from a keynote I delivered at a healthcare policy forum last fall. The metaphor, about scaffolding and systems failing quietly before they collapse, had been mine. Original, crafted in a 2 a.m. haze of caffeine and fatigue. And now it was hers, delivered with a polished smile, a perfect pause before the applause. I stood outside the door, heart still, phone in hand. I hit record, not for confrontation, for documentation. Inside, the crowd erupted in cheers. I heard Luther's voice say, "That's my girl," before fading into the sound of clapping. I didn't walk in. I didn't interrupt. I stepped back into the hallway and took a seat on a nearby bench. Not long after, a slideshow started. From my angle behind a decorative curtain, I could see the screen through the glass reflection. Childhood photos, graduation caps, family vacations, birthdays, all of them familiar, all of them incomplete. I was in none of them beyond the age of 18. I watched Clare's college montage, Ethan's wedding, Luther standing with colleagues over the decades. Even Buster, yes, the dog, had more screen time than I did. A woman in heels passed behind me, paused, then looked down. "Aren't you Vena?" she asked, eyebrows lifted. I nodded. "I thought you were in the slideshow. That's odd." I smiled without teeth. Apparently, I left the story too early to make the final cut. She blinked, smiled nervously, then walked away, shoes clicking fast on the floor. I stood, walked into the lobby bar, ordered a glass of white, sat at a corner table. I pulled out my phone, split-screened Claire's speech and my original keynote video, played them side by side. No editing, no added commentary, just raw proof. I uploaded both videos to a public folder and shared them with a simple caption. Sometimes words travel without permission. No names, no hashtags, just truth. Within minutes, my phone began to buzz. A few reactions from former colleagues, one from a past board member, another from a journalist I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't open the messages. Instead, I sipped my wine, closed my eyes, and let the noise pass over me like a wave that couldn't reach shore. 10 minutes later, I slipped out through the side entrance. Quiet, unseen, unbothered. By the time I reached my car, the vibrations from my phone hadn't stopped. Missed calls, texts, group messages lighting up. And finally, a number I hadn't seen in a while. Luther. He wasn't calling to ask if I was okay. He was calling because the mask just slipped in front of too many people. And in that sudden, weighty silence, I understood something I hadn't been able to name before. I wasn't mourning what I had lost. No, that moment wasn't about grief. It was about recognition, about watching them come to terms, in real time, with the truth they had so long refused to see. They were finally realizing what they never deserved in the first place. My silence, my loyalty, my restraint. The ballroom hadn't recovered. Not from the video, not from the truth. The aftermath lingered like smoke, hard to see, impossible to ignore. Conversations frayed at the edges, full of broken rhythm and second-guessing. Glasses clinked, but nobody toasted. The string quartet played on, valiantly trying to glue the atmosphere back together with arpeggios and bosh. But it was too late. The mood had cracked. Everyone felt it. Clare had disappeared, gone without a trace the moment the whispers started to carry weight. Irene sat stiff and brittle in her seat, fidgeting as if trying to wring tension from her own hands. Luther, ever the tactician, had retreated backstage, probably to huddle with his handlers, running damage control in the shadows. And I stood quietly against the far wall. Not in hiding, not anymore, but far enough from the center that I could watch them unravel without needing to be part of it. I wasn't sure what I intended to do next. I hadn't planned this moment. I didn't need to. The truth was doing just fine without choreography. Then Victor Thorne took the mic. No theatrics, no performative clearing of his throat, no paper notes or exaggerated smiles. Just his presence. Steady, sharp, unshakable. He raised his glass slowly and let the room fall still. "You've built many things here," he began, his voice calm but edged with gravity. His gaze swept the room, pausing for only a moment when it found Luther, who had re-emerged from the back, now standing like a man bracing for a blow. "You've built a name, a culture, a reputation for excellence." Polite applause. Obligatory nods. The kind of surface-level response rooms like this are trained to give, Victor continued. But what impresses me most is what your daughter has built, outside this room. Out of sight, out of credit, relentlessly, quietly, with more integrity than most of us in this building combined. Now the silence shifted, more alert, more aware, like something was coming. "And since truth deserves the mic more than tradition," Victor said, lifting his glass higher, "I want to toast the strategist who saved this company's future, asked for no recognition, and earned more respect than anyone I've worked with in years." He paused, then turned, not to Clare, not to the front of the room, not even to Luther, to me. "My boss," he said clearly, "Vena Warren." Gasps, actual gasps, like a movie scene where someone says the thing nobody's supposed to say out loud. There was a hush. Then the rustling of suits turning toward the back. Then the murmurs. "Wait, Vena's here?" Forks were dropped, glasses lowered. I watched Clare freeze across the room, her face drained of color. Irene's mouth parted in disbelief. And Luther, his eyes narrowed just enough before shifting away, as if he could still salvage the moment by pretending it didn't matter. I didn't march forward or steal the spotlight. I took one calm step out of the shadows, just enough to be seen. Victor held his glass toward me. I met his gaze, lifted mine. No dramatic speech, just a quiet nod. My silence now held weight it never had before. The applause came. Uneven, hesitant, but real. Some people clapped like they'd always known. Others clapped like they were realizing they'd missed something important. Either way, it wasn't performative. It was acknowledgement. The room had changed, and no one could unhear what had been said. As the event continued, it all shifted. Laughter turned cautious. Jokes weren't shared as loudly. Conversations were thinner, words more carefully chosen. People glanced at me now, not with contempt, but with recalibration. I didn't linger. I turned and made my way toward the ballroom exit. My phone buzzed just before I reached the door. A name flashed on the screen, one I hadn't seen in a long time, but recognized instantly. Luther. I let it ring twice before I answered. His voice came flat, controlled. But underneath the calm, I heard it. Wounded pride. "You humiliated me," he said. I waited a beat. Let the moment stretch. Let the truth breathe. "I didn't say a word," I replied. "But maybe that's the loudest I've ever spoken." Silence. Then, "You should have stayed out of it." His voice didn't carry fury, just tired disappointment, like I'd failed to perform my assigned role in his carefully constructed script. I let the pause hang again, then answered, simple and sharp. "Then you should have stayed honest." He didn't hang up. Neither did I. For a few seconds, we remained suspended in mutual understanding. Not reconciliation, just clarity. Something between us had split long ago. It had just taken this long to surface. Finally, I ended the call. I stepped outside, into the cool air of the parking lot. The music inside the ballroom resumed, muffled behind the thick glass doors. But I wasn't thinking about the music anymore. I wasn't thinking about them. For once, I wasn't the one holding the cracks together. I wasn't stitching silence over cruelty. I wasn't swallowing my truth so someone else could stay comfortable. I was standing in the open air. No spotlight, no speech, just stillness. And finally, I wasn't afraid to take up space in it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for them to love me better. I was too busy living the version of myself they never bothered to know. 2 weeks passed. No apology, no confrontation, not even a passive-aggressive text. Just silence. And it said more than words ever could. Claire posted some soft focus pictures from the party. Her at the podium, Dad smiling beside her. A cropped crowd applauding. The caption read, "A night we'll never forget. Legacy matters." I didn't comment. I didn't scroll long. I muted her account without a second thought. The fallout wasn't thunderous. It was quieter, but steady. An email from one of Claire's brand partners mentioned a pause in upcoming campaigns. Someone in our industry asked me offhandedly at a conference, "You're Claire's sister, right?" I always had a feeling who the real architect was. I smiled politely and pivoted the conversation. A card came from Irene. No handwriting, just a printed message. "Hope you're well. Take care. No return address. No signature." It felt like a formality. Or maybe a way to say, "We see you," without actually facing me. Either way, I tossed it into the recycling bin, unread beyond the first line. I took the rest of that week off. No client calls, no calendar alerts, just early morning walks by the Charles River, and a stack of unsent letters I wrote in my head and burned before I ever hit print. I deleted the folder on my desktop, undeniable, because I didn't need proof anymore. I wasn't fighting to be remembered. I was done proving I existed. That weekend, I flew down to Raleigh. Irene had texted, asking if I could pick up a few boxes she found in the garage. It was the first direct message from her in months. Short, almost robotic. I said I'd come by Saturday. When I arrived, no one answered the door. The house was quiet, familiar in that heavy, untouched way. The same beige carpet, the same picture frames on the wall, except one frame near the hallway table caught my eye. A photo from the party. Clare, Ethan, Luther. I wasn't in it. Again. And somehow, that hurt less than I expected. I carried the box to my car. It was lighter than I thought. Just a few old books, a broken paperweight, and a scarf I didn't remember owning. I paused at the front door before leaving. Looked back at the house. This time, not as someone waiting to be let in, but as someone who knew the difference between being home and being held hostage by history. They kept telling me I was too much. I whispered to no one, but maybe they were just too small. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just left. Back in Boston that evening, I poured myself some tea, opened my laptop, and began prepping for a Monday board meeting. A few minutes in, my phone buzzed. Victor. New seat just opened on the board. You interested? I stared at the message for a long second, then typed, only if it has my name on it this time. Sometimes the only way to break a cycle is to walk away from the table they never planned to set for you. And this time, I was setting my own. I used to think that silence was the same as peace, but now I know. Silence only heals when it's chosen, not forced. Walking away wasn't easy, but it gave me something no applause, no title, no family validation ever did. Clarity. I stopped fighting for a seat at a table that was never set for me. And maybe that's the moment I finally set one for myself. If you've ever been overlooked, underestimated, or made to feel like you were too much, I hope my story reminds you. Your worth isn't defined by who chooses to recognize it. It's defined by how you carry it when no one is watching. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from a place you once called home? Or stood tall in a room that tried to shrink you? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story resonated with you. Or just let me know where you're tuning in from. I read every message. And if this story touched you, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next one. We have more real-life reflections and deeply human moments to come. Let's keep walking forward, together.